who has jumped into this world from a professional and PCVE perspective. Our guest today, Stefan Jansen, is a policeman who games for a living. Hi Stefan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning, and what a nice introduction. It make my work sounds really cool.
It sounds very cool. So why don't we dive straight into it?
Yeah, of course.
How did you get involved with gaming for the police?
And it all started, I think, about 4 years ago. At that time, I was a digital community officer, and we were looking for a way to stay in touch with the youngsters. We've noticed several things, and those were a huge digital wave. All the youngsters were disappearing online. And we've noticed that on the streets, the youngsters didn't talk to us as much as they did before. And for the Dutch police, it's really important to know what is happening within the youngsters. What kind of troubles do they encounter? What kind of possible crimes do they encounter? Where can we help them? But it's also important for us to stay in touch with them, to let them see that we are approachable if they encounter certain problems. And we've noticed that those things were a bit slipping. Mm-hmm. So we look for a way to build on the trust. And actually about 86% of all the youngsters in the Netherlands is gaming. So they are gaming at home or on their mobile phones or on their PlayStations, PCs or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that opens a huge market for us, an easy way to reach all those youngsters. And we started looking at the gaming. In the beginning, we were with 6 police officers throughout all of the Netherlands. So we took our own consoles, our own PlayStations from home, mm-hmm. did it at home in our own free time, because at that moment, the Dutch police wasn't supporting it. The idea to reach out to youngsters through the world of gaming. They said, well, we are already short-staffed. Why is the Dutch police gaming?
I can imagine, yeah.
Go catch bad guys on the street. But we were still convinced, okay, this is a good idea. We know this is the world of the youngsters. We know this is their world. And we are sure we can reestablish those good bonds that we had with them before. So we just pressed on in our own spare time. And after a few weeks, the demand for gaming with the police was so large that we couldn't cope up with it. And that time, the Dutch police saw it as well. And they said, okay, well, maybe these guys are onto something. And from that moment, we started building. And at this moment, we have more or less 70 police stations working within the project to stay in touch with the youngsters through gaming.
Interesting. Yeah. So that started as a small group of police officers, and it grew to something that's now embedded in the police system.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And it's called Gaming with the Police,
yes.
right? Can you tell us a bit about how it looks right now? How does it work?
Yeah, we have 2 branches within the gaming of with the police. The first one is the online factor. It really consists of a police officer in the police station. He's supplied with a PlayStation and a headset, and on certain times in the week, preset times, he will go online and just game with the youngsters. He puts his headphones on, and during the gaming, he will talk with the youngsters. That's a really basic thing and the basic way that we work. The goal of this is to just have a conversation with them while gaming, mm-hmm. having fun and have the conversation with them, showing them that we are police officers first, but we are also people behind the uniform, mm-hmm. And letting them show that we are willing to invest and to step out of our comfort zone to their world, to understand them and to seek a connection. We've noticed that, for example, in the gaming world, they encounter a lot of things like pedophiles, but also right-wing extremists. A lot of the youngsters are vulnerable. They look for identity, and they get picked on by groups that want to involve them in crimes. The thing is that there's nobody in that world who tells them, hey, this is a red flag, you don't have to do this. There's nobody that talks to them, educates them, and that's a thing that we find really important. And
I can imagine, yeah.
And when we go to schools, for example, to teach them, the normal reaction is about a half of the class really likes it. Think, okay, this is cool. There's the police. I want to listen. And the other half of the class sits down, put on a hoodie, and thinks, "Oh my God, there's the police again." And
they're coming to lecture us.
yeah, exactly. They're
gotcha.
switched off, and they will never hear our message. But those are usually the guys that we want to reach. And when we game, we've noticed that boundary, they don't feel it. So they are still interested because they want to win the game. So they're into the game. They're focused into the conversation that you have with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you try to teach them things or give them a certain message, they don't think, okay, this is another propaganda moment or education moment. It's natural for them. It's a natural conversation.
Nice.
So the message that we want to tell them really sticks, and that's really cool.
Yeah, because you can be the police officer in a game.
Exactly.
That's super interesting, of
yeah.
course.
Yeah, so we reach a lot of youngsters that before we didn't reach.
That's great.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool
Mm-hmm.
on one hand, but also very effective.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned radical groups, far-right extremists, who are also active in those scenes. Can you tell me a bit about that prevention, countering violent extremism aspect of this project?
I think one of the most important things that we need to do is to establish good relations with those youngsters. Sometimes I compare the whole online world with a kind of a Wild West, and especially the gaming side. There isn't a sheriff in town. So the youngsters are free to roam around and have to deal with all those things themselves. Mm-hmm. And there's nobody steering them or telling this is right, this is wrong. Or to warn them, hey, listen, these guys, they're telling a story, but keep thinking, is this story real? Keep checking it with yourself. Is he telling the truth, or is he just lying to make me do certain things or to get me through a certain part of the society? So one of the most important things is to gain their trust, to talk with them and keep talking with them and teach them what's right and what's wrong. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the most important things. If we start at an early age, then I am absolutely sure that we can steer them in the right good direction, but make them resilient against those messages. And also to tell the story that if they encounter certain things, that they can report it to us, that we can follow up on their report.
Do you get a lot of those reports from these online communities?
Well, not really. Like sometimes they encounter certain things, but until this moment, never really big. But it's more in the sense of youngsters that were approached to do certain criminal activities. Those are the main things. And sometimes they encounter certain ads or messages or something like that, and then they report it to us. But those were a few cases, not that I think there are hundreds of cases. No.
Well, that might be a good thing, actually, I would say, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of games are you playing? Are you really looking for the most popular games, or do you also factor in risks? Because, the gaming space, it's so vast.
It is.
Billions of people are playing games. So how do you focus your interventions?
We work closely together with a private company. It's called ASL. And ASL is the world market leader in esports and e-gaming. And from the beginning of the project, we had really good contact with them. And they support us in our goals. And what they do for us is they provide us with information regarding which games are the most played games in the Netherlands, which ages are playing those games. So all the knowledge regarding the gaming, they supply us with that. And that's really valuable for us. And we've noticed that 3 games that were most played in the Netherlands were formerly known FIFA, Fortnite, and Call of Duty. Those were the most played games, and Fortnite and FC24 were no-brainer for us. That's no problem. But especially Call of Duty was a bit of a risk for us because it's a really violent shooter. So we really looked at it. Should we be playing this game as a Dutch police? Because on the one side, we want to prevent gun violence and all those things, and knife violence, and we want to prevent youngsters to carry those things. Mm-hmm. But on the other side, we are going to play a game where they shoot other people.
Yeah, and then you get involved as a police officer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we really looked at it, but we made the decision that this is a place where those youngsters are. And it also provides us with possibilities to start the conversation and to steer the conversation. For example, they have knives in the game in Call of Duty. One of the issues in the Netherlands is that the youngsters wear knives. We have pretty large numbers of knife violence and youngsters carrying knives for their own defense, they say. So when we are playing that game, Call of Duty, it gives us a possibility to steer the whole conversation towards knife violence with the youngsters. Hey, we are playing Call of Duty. It's a violent game. Do you know that this violence is just a game? It's not real. And can you see the differences between reality and the game?
And you mentioned, it could be perceived as a risk for police officers. Are there any other risks you had to take into consideration before you actually started to play these games?
Public opinion is always really important, and for the Dutch police as well. And that was one of the things that we were curious of. How is it received within the Dutch public? Because we are short-staffed. We can't do a lot of things that the public wants us to do because we are short-staffed. And now they see police officers gaming, and they still associate gaming with just fun. It's a hobby,
right?
Entertainment.
Yeah.
You do it at home, but what they don't consider is that the gaming market is that huge. It's bigger than the music and the video world combined. So it's that massive, and what they don't consider is that the whole online space for youngsters, that's their living room at this moment. That's their life. When I was young, we went outside and played with the youngsters, played with our friends, meet our friends over there, grew up on the streets. And that was visible for the parents, and it was visible for everybody. But that shifted towards the online world. The online world is so massive, and it knows no boundaries. So my kid could be talking to a guy in America, for example, or in Japan, or everywhere. And the public needs to know this, and needs to know that it's not like before. It's a new generation, and we need to understand how important that online world is for that new generation. They speak to their friends, they create their own identity, they learn things over there, and there has to be a presence online to steer them.
Yeah, because there are also loads of bad actors active online.
Yeah.
So how do you identify and act on those PCVE issues that arise? We know that far-right extremists are very active in gaming communities, but also, there's still the case of jihadist grooming online. So how do you act on those things?
Yeah. We try to do a lot of the preventive work and try to educate and teach youngsters what to do if they encounter certain messages or if they are approached by certain people that try to sell their story to them. I think that's one of the most important things, because if you make them resilient and teach them the right and the wrong things, then they can recognize certain things and can steer away from it. And I think at this moment, we're not there yet. At this moment, I think in the society, there are too much vulnerable youngsters. And this also, I think, has to do with the whole Corona period. So they were confined to their homes, feel lonely, and seek out, okay, but who am I? So that makes them ideal for the extremists, for example, that want to sell their story and try to recruit those youngsters. We have certain teams within the Dutch police that, for example, when we do receive messages about certain boards or certain people trying to recruit youngsters, we can collect that information, send it towards those teams, to our colleagues, and then they will investigate and to look into, okay, who is this guy and do we need to act on it? But we also stay in good contact with, for example, like a PlayStation. And when we receive information that youngsters are being groomed, for example, we can report it to PlayStation so they can act on it. And, for example, ban that account or give us the information behind the account or those things.
So the presence of the police officers is really for guidance. And then if they, notice something more serious and actionable, they forward it to either colleagues or to the platforms themselves to act on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So those police officers are then they're visible on those platforms. I can imagine their accounts are labeled as the police, or how does that look like?
We have a certain house style, so all our gaming names start with pol, that's short from police, and an underscore, and then the name of the police station that's police officers working from. So that makes it easy for youngsters in his working area to recognize, okay, this is my police officer from my own hood, my own area. So then you immediately have like a connection between them. It's also mentioned on the website of the Dutch police, which police teams are joined in this program. So youngsters, if they encounter a certain police officer or somebody who pretends to be a police officer, they can easily check it on the police website to see if it's a real one or not. And we are trying to do certain things to enhance those visible ways. For example, in Fortnite, in the beginning of the project, we created like a certain avatar, a picture for the project that when youngsters see this picture, they immediately know, okay, this is the Dutch police and the gaming with the Dutch police. It's created completely in the style of Fortnite, so really cartoony, and it has one police officer in it. And what we're actually doing at this moment is we're trying to build up a kind of a marketing campaign around that police officer. So what we are doing is we took it from a 2D picture towards a 3D picture, and that's being currently developed. And then we can use that in, for example, ads or short commercials, all those things. But we are also working together with companies to get that character into games. So the conversation, for example, just started with Epic Games and trying to getting this avatar in Fortnite, for example.
So you really build those characters up as police officers in the game as well.
The goal that we have is that when the youngsters see this police officer, for example, in Fortnite, they know, okay, this is only exclusively available for the Dutch police. So there's nobody else with this character that can pretend they're Dutch police. Now, this is the Dutch police. And make a trustworthy platform for them to reach out to us. Yeah,
because that seems key to me, right? Building trust on those platforms,
exactly.
Because everyone can pretend to be a police officer at some point.
Yeah, it really is, and we already had certain cases where people pretended they were police officers, but then we immediately act on it, and it's a crime to pretend like you're a police officer. And one of the other ways that we are really visible is throughout our social media channels. In the Dutch police, almost every community officer or digital community officer has his own social media page on Instagram or Facebook mainly. So we are really visible through those channels as well, and tell the youngsters, okay, on Tuesday night between 7 and 9 we're going to game. Come join us and add us with this gaming name. And I think that's one of the most important things within the project. We do not tell the kids to come, you have to game with us. No, we just offer them the possibility to game with us, and they can seek us out, add us, and that way they make the first step towards gaming with us. And that makes it a lot easier for them to trust us and to tell us things.
So it's like an open invitation in
exactly.
a way, right? Yeah. And it feels like you're well plugged into the community. You know your stakeholders. You've got connections with gaming platforms, but also game developers. How important are these connections for this project?
Essential. In the past, we did a lot of interventions that were designed by the police without involving, for example, private companies or youngsters, or their expertise and their information. And we've noticed that a lot of these interventions didn't stick with the youngsters. They were designed by adults, by us, and the youngsters were like, okay, what do I need to do with this? It's not what I'm going to use. So there was a lot of money spent, a lot of time spent without any result. In this project, from the beginning, we involved those experts, we involved those youngsters, because those are the experts. They know what sticks, what works, and what doesn't work in this world. We involved companies like ASL. They have the expertise. We as the Dutch police didn't have that expertise regarding the gaming. Okay, we know what a PlayStation is and we know what the game is, but not the way that youngsters think and how quickly you can build trust if you do the right things. So it's essential to involve them from the beginning in evolving your project and to reaching your goals.
So you mentioned working with tech, with the platforms, with the developers. Are you involving other stakeholders in this project?
Yeah, we do. We try to really create like an online community. and we also involve like youth workers, but also other first-line practitioners to join this online community and not make it only a thing from the police, but make it a society thing. And what we want to achieve with that is that when, for example, youngsters have issues or questions regarding certain topics that are not really police related, then we can immediately refer them towards one of the other parties within the community. And tell them, for example, okay, this is not a police question, but hey, youth worker, you could be of more value for this guy. Do your thing. That way we create like an online community, and we are sure that this online community will also work on towards a physical community. So when youngsters learn their stakeholders within their area, then they will recognize them as well on the streets. And it makes it easier for a youth worker or police officer or whoever to talk with them, to be recognized, and to lower those boundaries of approachability, and to talk with each other.
That sounds like a pretty broad approach to prevention work.
Yeah, it is.
And is it kind of mirrored in the offline approach right now? And did you want to implement that to online, or is it slightly different?
No, what we try to do is we start online, but we want to support it also offline. You cannot see only the online or the offline world. They have to. It's just one world together. So the one cannot exist without the other at this moment. So what we're actually doing is we try to create it online and then also pull it towards the offline world. We have a concept within Gaming with the Police is gaming on tour. We have like a whole setup that we can build everywhere, in every corner of the street. It's no problem. Youth officers, schools, whatever. We can build the whole gaming on tour stand over there and physically start gaming with those youngsters. So there we can create the community as well, and let those communities support each other, blend into each other. And then at the end, we hope to get one big community, so online and offline, to strengthen each other and to reach out to each other. And that way also share the messages and the experiences and the lessons taught, for example.
So it seems like you're well plugged into the gaming sector right now. Looking ahead, the rise of AI, maybe VR or the metaverse will become a big thing. It will also change the gaming environment. What kind of opportunities do you see on the horizon?
I think that, for example, virtual reality always gives us opportunities to enhance the experience and to even show the youngsters more of what does the police do and who are we. For example, I can imagine that at this moment a game like Roblox, if you put that in virtual reality, that would be really cool for youngsters with the VR glasses on, in virtual reality, walk around, go to, for example, a digital police station if they want to report certain things, and maybe in a way of working with certain things that youngsters encounter online, and letting AI do the first research or something like that. I spoke about the digital police station, for example. Maybe that through AI we could make like a digital police officer within that digital police station that could do the first reaction on questions of youngsters, for example. So that, for example, when my physical police officers, when they are offline, for example in the night or something like that, the police station is manned by AI-guided digital police officers, for example, that answer the basic questions and collect information and forward that towards our physical police officers. But I'm not really that read into AI that I know the full possibilities.
Now, of course, and it's pretty much a developing field, right? I think it's very, interesting to also be aware that these technologies are out there. Mm-hmm. And it will provide practitioners for an opportunity to be in those places when they really become bigger, and grow maybe in the same direction as the gaming.
I think we need to be on the forefront of those developments, and I think that's important. What we've noticed, and then I'm speaking towards the Dutch police, is that we were always 2, 3, 4 steps behind, and that costed us a lot of information. But if we could breach that gap, close that gap from 4 steps behind towards 1 step behind, so that would be a win, I think.
And do you think this could be expanded to different European countries? And have you heard of any other examples from the EU?
We are actually working together with several other countries to explore the whole gaming area and how police forces can use gaming. We met with the Swedish police, the Finnish police, Icelandic, the Danes were there, Norwegians. I think from Belgium there were also several colleagues. We all came together for a whole week to look at, okay, how can we implement the gaming towards our goals? And from that point, several countries started gaming as well. And we are already working for about 3 years with it. But for example, Sweden is going to start with gaming and are really looking, okay, how can we implement it? Finland is starting as well. And in, I think, June, they invited us to go to Finland for a week to teach their colleagues about how to implement the gaming. So you see, it's a movement that is growing, and that's just because the gaming world is massive, and there are so many youngsters in this gaming world, but also so many parties that want to do wrong, and we need to be there as well. We need to be visible there as well.
It's quite interesting that you mentioned the countries such as Denmark, Sweden, Finland. In a previous episode of this podcast series, we call them the usual suspects. Funding is there. There's maybe a little bit of a culture that's more open to embracing the online. Do you have any tips for maybe Southern or Eastern European countries where these structures don't necessarily exist?
Well, it's quite difficult because the way that the Dutch police is set up, it allows us to do these things. We are really community driven. We work a lot in a preventive way, but a lot of the other countries, a lot of the other police forces work in a repressive way. So that means that they are less likely to use, for example, to spend time and money on a way like we do. So I think that's one of the main things that they first need to do is to work on their community policing and start building on the trust of the people, because you cannot put it there and say, okay, this is it. Your police force needs to be ready for that, but your population needs to be ready for that as well. So it's really a mindset for the police, but for the civilians as well. And then I think the way that gaming works, it can work in every country. In every country there are gamers. The gaming is huge everywhere. You can take the way we work, but mold it towards the way that your police force works in your country. And then I'm sure it has an added value to everybody.
That sounds like a good starting point, I would say. So do you have any tips for practitioners who want to embrace the gaming space a bit more?
Yeah. I think in the beginning we started with console-based gaming, and we did that because it's cheaper for us, but also for those youngsters. What you typically see is that the youngsters between, I think, about 8 and 14 years old start on console-based gaming. And that's just has to do with the low expense that they need to pay for example, a PlayStation. If you look at the PC gaming, it's a lot more expensive. And many of the youngsters do not have the financial resources to pay for those things. So my advice is start out with the console-based gaming, because that's the easy way to step into it, and then evolve it towards, for example, in the future, PC gaming. It's also a lot more easy for you as a practitioner to get used to the world of the gaming. It's a little bit more of an easy platform to understand. Start slowly, start small, and then build it up. And especially within the different organizations that frown upon the term gaming, if you start it small and prove it every time that it works, and then start building and building on results, you will open doors within your own organization, and you will encounter, hopefully, less resistance towards the gaming than we did.
That's sound advice. Thank you. My final question would be, do you have a place where we can find more information about this topic? Any resources you want to point out?
What they can always do, if people are interested in our story, they can send me an email, for example, to ask me for information. We're also on LinkedIn, so they can add me and ask for information. I will happy to provide that and help them on the way. I think there's also a document mentioned on the database of Rempel, where they can find several pieces of information. If they go to the website of the Dutch police, there's a web page over there that provides some information regarding the project. But if they really want to do a deep dive, please reach out to me and I will take them along and share our experience with them about what to do and what not to do.
That's great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
So, well, it sounds like we covered a lot of ground here, and I think we should probably wrap up. I would like to thank my guest, Stefan Jansen, for taking the time to talk to me today. Thank you so much, Stefan.
Thank you for having me.
And finally, a big thank you to all of you for listening to this episode of the REN in Focus podcast, brought to you by REN practitioners. Goodbye.